So, normally I wouldn't do this, but because I had a pretty crazy race, decided I'll make a commentary. If anyone wants to gain some tips on Pocono or just from my own memory. So, qualified well the day before, got on pole. Qualifying was kind of damp in 3 corners. The race started in the dry, but there was always a chance of rain. So here, got a pretty good start going into turn 1. Slotted right in to the lead. So this track is Pocono South, counterclockwise. So it's a pretty uncommon track, not used very often. Couldn't find any videos on Bertil on YouTube before coming here. Only 2 videos of anyone driving this track, pretty much, before coming here. It's not on any sim, and I've never been here before, so I was pretty happy with getting pole to a track I've never been, and not driven on the sim, or even seen real videos of. That was cool. I also had a little bit of luck in qualifying. I think I pretty much got the most out of the car. Everyone else perhaps made some mistakes. I worked my way up to it. So, coming onto the straight, checking the mirrors, trying to see if the guy in P2 is close enough. And I think first lap, I decide to take the line. He's far enough back. So on the full line, carry as much speed in, carry on. Now, we did run this track the opposite direction about 2 weeks ago, counterclockwise. But this is the way it's normally run, so the rubber is actually more aligned to the track this way. But I was faster the other direction. It better suited my style. This way is more conventional, slow and fast out type corners. I had a little bit of trouble in a couple corners, I'll say later. But, you know, I wasn't the fastest person actually on the weekend. I think the guy in P2 was actually a little bit faster on average. So again, coming onto the main straight, checking the mirrors to see where the guy in P2 is, to see if I have to defend. I think this time around he's a little bit closer, although you don't see him in the camera. So I'm hugging the inside, he's probably behind me. I'm trying to determine if he's going to pull for the pass. I stay inside. He's probably on the outside. Still hug the corner pretty well. Stay in first, continue on to the infield. Infield courses are always a little bit weird because there's generally not that much rubber and no one really knows them that well. They're not as exciting oftentimes as full layout courses. But still a lot of fun to drive these cars around this type of track. This corner here I always had trouble with on the weekend with the downshifts. So I had a weird downshifting pattern in that corner where I would brake and hold the second gear very late and then downshift in between the apexes, which is probably not the fastest, definitely not the fastest, but I managed to do it more consistently than trying to brake and downshift earlier. Again, checking the mirrors on the main straight through turn 1, NASCAR 1. Trying to see where the guy in P2 is. This time again I go to defend a little bit further inside this time. I'm trying to see if I can hold the guy outside, but he times it perfectly and whoop, does the over-under, gets right in on me, and I knew at this point, I didn't have that line going to the turn 2, so let it by. Tried to make sure I didn't lose too much time and keep myself in P2 and not drive to P3. Now the line that this guy, who's in P1 now, runs for the most laps into this corner is a little bit wider. Had trouble running that line. I think the brake balance was a little bit too far rear in this car. Tried to change it, but I wasn't allowed to. And I think later on, you can see that that's the case. So now I'm checking the mirrors. P3 is also pretty close behind. So me and the other 2 guys We're really close in qualifying, you know, only separated by maybe hundredths or tenths without the draft, probably in the hundredths. I timed the draft well for one lap in quality, and that's why I got pole. Although I think my second best lap still would have got pole by a couple hundredths. So here, guy in P1 is defending. I made a move to the outside to see if he would make any mistakes or anything. He didn't. He was consistent. So carry on. Just hang in there, see if I can wait for a mistake or put some pressure on him, even though I know he's a little bit, I think he's a little bit faster than me overall. The guy in P3 is, you know, just right there behind me. So I'll make sure that, you know, I'm a little bit defensive into that corner right there, which is a braking zone. It's always possible that someone could try and sneak a dive bomb in there or something. Make sure you get a good exit onto this corner, so you get a good run. Try and hang in the draft, which will help defend the P2 position from the guy behind me. Checking the mirrors again. And he's right there behind me. So this time getting a good draft from far away, a lot of speed, but not sure if I can really carry it. Can't brake super deep into this corner. The car always locks into the rears before the fronts, which is a bit awkward. So I can't brake super deep into the corner. Some of the other cars I've driven it with the series do have brakes that I can attack more. So I think the balance varies sometimes from car to car. Yeah, and here you can see guy in P1 really goes all the way outside, and I tried doing that in qualifying and practice, and I can do it sometimes, but every now and then the car gets a little squirrely. I decided it was more consistent, especially since I'm having trouble with some of that corner occasionally. I just wanted to focus on consistency, so draw a little straighter line in the brake zone into that corner. This time it looks like, you know, guy in P1 got a real good exit coming onto the straight. Me not as much, a little bit further behind, so the draft won't be as strong for me to pull me up ahead. I'm a little bit more worried about the guy in P3 behind me, and again I go to defend, so you can tell the guy's probably right there. Yep, there he is, right on the outside, holding position. He didn't get the run on me there, so stay in P2. This corner right here is deceiving on camera, you can't tell, but it's actually downhill, off camber, and blind exit. So when you're turning, you can't really see the exit. And you can see, starting to see some drops of water hit the camera lens. So you can sort of tell, like, maybe will it rain? So for sure, at the time when I was thinking, you know, there was probably water drops in my head. Just a little misting, you know, not really anywhere that it's coming down, just a little foreshadowing, I guess, about the crazy shit that we're about to have happen. Come onto the straight. Again, stay inside. Some people ran all the way out coming onto the straight. I don't think that was really necessary. It didn't really use a lot of grip, so felt it was better to stay a little tighter. It shortened the distance. It was a little more defensive. This time we're running a little wider, so it seems guy in P3 is not as close to me. Real tight there to the apex cone, but I don't think I knocked it over, which is good because that would have gotten me a penalty. Climbing over the curbs this time, a little clumsy. The guys at the school don't really like that, but I didn't do it that often, so it was okay. Camera's getting really dirty now. Wish I could clean it while you're driving. So we're still sort of holding station, about the same distance, P2 to P3. I think one of these laps I don't get a pretty good run on coming onto the straight in Exile. Might be this one. So still holding a little tighter on the exit, checking the mirrors, a little further back behind from P1. I think the rain is a little bit risky because I'm feeling the rain. I'm trying to worry if I should, you know, push super hard or not. Yep, you see guy in P3 gets a real good draft and run on the outside, and a good exit out of T1. I take it cautiously, was a little bit ahead of me, and that's why I let him by. Probably might have been able to do a little better job between turn 1 and turn 2 and hold a position. At this point, I do feel I'm still, I think, a little faster than the guy who passed me. So try and focus, get a good exit out of this corner, and hang in the draft. Even from a long way back, the draft still works in these cars. If you wait till you're closer to use a draft, you don't really get a much of a run. You gotta start building up speed in the draft when you're pretty far away. So you can tell that I'm starting to gain on him, thanks to the toe. And I decided to go for him on the outside. At this point, there's a little bit more drizzle. So I think the guy in P2 is also a little worried about the cautiousness. You know, if the grip is changing on track. This track being a NASCAR oval, I think the asphalt itself is supposed to drain a little better. Some of the older tracks in America, like Road America and Sebring, they use some, I guess, not quite as draining well pavement, and that stuff becomes like ice, even with a sprinkling of rain. But I think the NASCAR ovals are a little bit better. But the infield for this track, I think the drainage is not so great. So camera's getting still kind of dirty. More and more rain. Not a particularly great close exit, but I am still close enough to get the toe in the draft. So I'm not losing too much ground on this particular run into turn 1. And I decide to use the full width to try and gain as much time. I think you can see guy in P2 defend from a little bit not necessary from that position. I think the guy in P1 actually locked his tires going into turn 1. Driving this car, I was never able to lock the fronts. The rear is always locked first. I think I could have hit the brakes a lot harder and brake deeper if I had a little bit more front bias. Staying tight here, getting a little bit of time in that corner. You know, it's not the one that I was particularly good at all weekend. Little wobble from P2 there. Also, you can see suddenly a little bit more drops, a bit closer this time around. So I think this time I should get a chance to really go for it in turn 1. Yep, really close. And I think on this instance, Theo in P2 was probably a little bit worried about the rain. That's probably why I got, a good break on the outside and a run. Took the position into turn 1. So I remember at this point sitting in the car and thinking, man, like it's really starting to come down. And being a little bit worried about how to drive every single corner because it's starting to rain a little bit and the grip is going to change. And we got some running yesterday in sort of wet conditions, but it was only partially wet. Like this corner here, the next corner on the entry, and then turn 1. So everywhere else it wasn't really that wet. It was dry pretty much everywhere else when we were running yesterday. And now this corner is soaking wet. All of a sudden, it was like just turning into that corner, and then the track was just white. And it's still soaking wet on this part of the straight. And then suddenly, it's basically here, it's dry again. Like it's not wet at all. So there's some sort of rainstorm coming from that side of the track and going towards turn 1. So here at turn 1, it's like dry. Like maybe there's a few drizzles, but it's not raining. So you see guy in P1 locks it. I stay a little bit, brake in the middle of the track, not because I'm defending, but this time I'm a little bit worried. I was about the grip. I didn't want to be close to the wall in case I locked up or something. Give myself a little more cushion in case I need to recover, spin, or slide. So I caught up again. And now it rains much further. So even out this track, this corner is pretty soaking wet. Guy in P1 is also taking it cautiously, as you should. It's getting a little bit really slidey. This is like full wet conditions already, right? In this course of like 1-2 laps. And now over here, it is really wet in this corner. There was a big pool on the outside. When I went through that corner, you could kind of see on the outside, there's a lot of standing water already. And getting super sideways on the straight, you know, I think I short shifted in 3, wasn't really sure if I should or not. But I was gauging the speed of P1 ahead of me. I said, you know, he's going for it. He hasn't spun yet, so I should still be able to go for it. And again, it's still sort of dry-ish on this side of the track. Super weird driving conditions. It's changing, not even lap by lap, I would just say within the lap it's changing so much. It's probably different from when that guy runs to the corner when I run to the corner. Now the rain is up to here. And it's coming down hard, real hard. This corner's super awkward in the wet. See, on this side, this lap I was able to go all the way to the outside. There was no issue. Probably shouldn't have done that though. Starting to get super wet here. Very slippery and slidey. I try to brake early, but there's so much standing water. I almost lose the car here. Almost. Managed to keep it going. Keep the car rolling, don't stall it. Guy in P3 is also having probably a hard time behind me, as everyone else is driving the track, so I didn't have to worry about losing that spot. This time I run sort of outside and I see, man, there's a lot of standing water. You know, next time around, I'm not going to go all the way out that wide. Even more standing water in the straight. You can see it's like a boat, basically, pushing, plowing water. There's so much spray now, I can't see anything, basically, from the car in front. And even my visor, I can't see much. Here, I get kind of sideways on turn 1 and lose it. Completely lose it. And the guy behind me loses it. I see him losing it, and I decide, oh, dude, I better save this, otherwise I'm going to get hit. So, managed to keep it rolling through that corner. What I did is I hit the brakes as hard as I could to lock it. You know, as the saying goes, if you spin both feet in. So I locked it, kept the car straight, turned my head a little bit earlier to see where I could, where the track was going, and then released the brakes as the car was pointing straight, and kept enough speed to restart the car basically as we're moving. So I think the guy behind me, in efforts to avoid me because he was worried about hitting me, he lost it. So now we go to this corner and look at that spray. It was so much standing water. I was completely soaked after that. Like, I mean, if I wasn't soaked before, I just remembered that it was like being in a log flume at a water park. There is so much standing water everywhere on the track. The track is almost undrivable, and in some corners I would say it is undrivable. Now this right here is a lapper, it's not the guy on P1. I went from the outside to try and stay, you know, try and stay in the race for P1 in case the guys made a mistake, or make sure I stayed in P2 in case the guy P3 was catching up. So I really had to go push for that pass on the outside, which is super awkward because there was definitely standing water there when I was going for the pass. This time going on to the straight, not pushing as hard considering that I know it's not flat on the straight anymore because of the wet. And you can see I'm getting squirrely. I'm putting a little bit higher on the track, and the flagman is down there waving the checkers. And I am at this point a little bit thankful that the race is over. It's getting more and more brutal. I wasn't sure, you know, if we'd be able to finish.